Hello, everyone. And let's see. I uh, I want to start out with thank you all for being here. And while I let other people in, I'm gonna do the intro. But yeah, thank you, and thank you for investing your time and energy to attend this meeting. And of course, because what else can you be doing else on a Sunday evening than that would be more valuable than breaking free from suffering, right? So Um, before we go on with this satsang, I just want to express the importance of this work we are doing. Um, for me, I came to realize that this work has a place as a fundament for everything I do, because what I do better when the conditioned mind is not interfering all the time. I'm a better business person, a better friend, a better dad, a better athlete, uh, just a better person in general. If I'm that person established in the true self. So whatever you are looking for today and after today, I invite you to really commit to this work and see for yourself how life will get better. So before I hand it over to Christopher, I would like to offer this moment to Ray, my dear friend Ray, to lead the way with a beautiful poem. So, Ray, where are you? Let me pin you to the screen. Turn on the mic, and it's all yours.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's nice. Welcome, everybody, to this satsang. I'm gonna read a beautiful poem from Rumi. Uh, so let's start this poem. Lose yourself. Lose yourself in this love. When you lose yourself in this love, you will find everything. Lose yourself. Lose yourself. Do not fear the loss, for you will rise from the earth and embrace the endless heavens. Lose yourself. Lose yourself. Escape from this earthly form, for this body is a chain and you are its prisoner. Smash through the prison wall and walk outside with the kings and princes. Lose yourself. Lose yourself at the foot of the glorious king. When you lose yourself before the king, you will become the king. Lose yourself. Lose yourself. Escape from the black cloud that surrounds you. Then you will see your own light, as radiant as the full moon. Now enter that silence. This is the surest way to lose yourself. What is your life about, anyway? Nothing but a struggle to be someone. Nothing but a running from your own silence.
Thank you, Ray. That was beautiful.
Thank you too.
So I guess Rumi was up to something, as I can. So I wanna. I'm gonna hand it over to Christopher. And again, Christopher, thank you for being here. It's all yours.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to Open Self-Realization Satsang. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction. Thank you, Ray, for that beautiful poem from Rumi. What a powerful poem. What a powerful way to open up this satsang. The words so relevant to what we are here today to explore and the purpose of what these open meetings are all about. You know, I came across a news article recently, just kind of popped up on my feed, and it was talking about the next pandemic. Of course, we're all familiar with what has just happened in the last 3 years or so, and how much that has changed people's lives, society, and in many ways it has been a catalyst for so many people, a catalyst for people to really turn within and to not have so much focus outside. It really stopped people in their tracks. And something tells me that there is more of this kind of thing to come. And this is why this work is ever more important. Always important, but certainly important now, maybe more than ever in known human history, because we are really at a crossroads, a turning point. Unlike any crossroad or turning point that we've experienced up to this point. Because with technology, the way in which the world is so tightly connected, there is really a potential to go one of two ways. Either we move towards greater consciousness, greater freedom, greater connectivity, greater growth, and we really flower and flourish as human beings. Or, of course, there is always the potential that we go in the opposite direction of less freedom, chaos, more unhappiness, more suffering, more limitation. And both of these are possible. It's very important that we recognize that the line between danger and opportunity is a very, very fine one. And that nothing is guaranteed. Everything is a possibility. And so self-realization is the awakening to what we really are, in which there is a possibility to truly be human. We all have the potential to be human, but we're not really human until we become conscious, until we really awaken. Before that point, we are existing, but we are not alive. We are functioning, but we are not necessarily awake. We are moving, but we are not necessarily conscious. We can be in a kind of robotic, sleep-like state. And we've all been in that place at some time or another. And when you look at the society, the world, there are still many, many beings that are in this state of unconsciousness. And it is from a state of unconsciousness that, of course, a society can end up sleepwalking towards its own potential destruction. So really, this is how important this time is right now. I know every generation probably thinks that its generation is the most important one. But really, when you look at the whole situation, this is probably the greatest and most tumultuous time that we have faced in known history. And so, as it has been said by many of the mystics and saints and sages throughout the ages, the greatest work that we can do is to realize who we are, to awaken, and begin to really live as that, which really means freedom from suffering, freedom from unhappiness, to express what they call in the East, Nityananda, the eternal happiness. To be in eternal happiness. It is our true nature to be in causeless eternal happiness. Some people maybe think that suffering is part of life. In fact, many philosophies have said that suffering is part of life. But what I say is that suffering is only necessary until it is no longer necessary. Suffering is only happening because we are out of alignment with life. We're not awake to who we are. We have wrong ideas about who we are, wrong ideas about the world. And it is through these wrong ideas, which are really illusions, that we then live in a state of delusion. And to live in delusion means that we don't see things the way that they are. We only see things the way that our mind believes that they are. It's a distortion. And from that distortion, we are then unhappy. When our true nature is to be eternally happy, always happy. And so this is what we can ask ourselves, is, are we always happy? Happiness does not necessarily mean that we are jumping around for joy with a big smile on the face all the time, although that may be the way that it sometimes expresses itself. But really the happiness we are speaking of here is peace, tranquility, freedom. It arises from freedom. Freedom means to be free from unhappiness, to be free from suffering. And when there is no suffering, no unhappiness, what is left is happiness, is peace, is tranquility. This is our true nature. So when I look around in society, I see that through this idea of the next pandemic, and there is still a lot of fear. And this fear is coming because people do not know who they are. They've forgotten their true nature. They are overlooking it. And so that is why there is fear, because fear means that we think we can lose something. Fear means we think we can be harmed, that our true nature can be harmed in some way. But when we realize our true nature, we recognize that there is nothing to fear. And when we don't live from fear, it's impossible to be controlled by fear. And so much of society is controlled and governed by fear. Because most human beings are operating in the lower consciousnesses of survival and pleasure seeking. And this is really the main motivating factor for most people's lives. Maybe for your own life right now, or maybe in the past. If you look at what is the motivation underneath all of your actions, all of your pursuits, you'll find that it is either to not experience something that you fear, which would be something that you would say is painful, unpleasant, or it would be to try and experience more of what you think will give you pleasure, which is often perceived as happiness. And so that then creates desire for that thing that you think will give you lasting pleasure, or what is perceived as happiness. And so this is the main motivating force in the conditioned mind. But in our true nature, we're not governed by the conditioned mind, and we're not governed by these motivations of fear and desire, because as we awaken, we find that the source of all true fulfillment, the source of all true pleasure, satisfaction, is already within us. It's just we've not discovered it. We've not been paying attention to it. We've been looking outside. And it is this looking outside that also has caused many of the issues that we find in our societies as well. So I would like to just invite you all just to close the eyes, just to close your eyes, just to take away one of the senses, and just to rest the mind, to rest your thinking, and to see what meditation is pointing to life itself here and now. Can you be with reality here and now? Can you see reality here and now? Allowing your mind to be on holiday, vacation. Instant meditation. Not to do anything. Not to try and get somewhere. Also not to be anything. Not to be a meditator. Not to be a person. To simply be with life as it is. Not to try and do something or control something. But instead to see what meditation is pointing to. It is a device to show the view of reality, of truth. Can you value what is? Can it be appreciated? Not to try and be somewhere else, not to try and get something else, not to become something else, but to appreciate and value how things are already, right now. And you can open the eyes. So open self-realization satsang is to realize the self, the big self, the true self. It is in our private meetings, the retreats, that we really go deep into this kind of exploration. In open self-realization satsang, we explore the path, the prerequisites, to see more clearly self-realization. Satsang is a word that means true company. Sat means truth. Sang means association or company. It is maybe the most beautiful, auspicious kind of meeting that we can have together, where we really get to connect in the energy field of truth itself. A real heart-to-heart connection, where we are coming together with the same kind of intention, the same kind of resonance. Any other kind of meeting is usually for the mind in some way. It is to learn something, to get some kind of knowledge, some more information that you can then do something with, something in the future with. But in satsang, it's not like that. In satsang, it is not to acquire more information. It is to explore, to look at what is here, to look at what is true. And as a reminder, in open self-realization satsang, this is for beings that have had an initial awakening, and for beings that want to complete their awakening. In initial awakening, we have a glimpse of our true face. We see what we are. We see the truth. This is what they call in the Zen tradition as a satori, a flash of awakening. It is really a moment of full consciousness. Because when we are operating in the mind, identified with our mind, believing every thought, we're in a state of unconsciousness. To give you an example of this, a common experience that we've all had is, if you're driving in a car, you might find that you're daydreaming. You're thinking about where you're going, what you're going to do when you get there. You're thinking about something that happened in the so-called past. Really, you're not driving. You're not really there, because you're somewhere else. You're daydreaming. And so you might have had the experience that you're driving and you're daydreaming, and then all of a sudden, something on the road really captures your attention. And so you snap out of this daydream, this state of unconsciousness, and for a moment you are alert. You are conscious. And in that moment, you're really here. And then what might happen is that you fall back out into a state of unconsciousness again. back in the daydreaming, back in the mind wandering. The same is true if you're walking down the street. Many different activities we do where this might happen for you. And so this is kind of like this satori, this flash of awakening, this initial awakening. There is a moment of consciousness in which you see that you are not the body and the mind. You see that you are something much deeper, vaster, more true. Not as a concept, not as an idea, not something that you've read, not something you've heard, but that you yourself, within your own authority of looking, you realize it, you see it. Otherwise, it can only ever really be a belief system. It's not a first-hand direct experience, it's a second-hand experience. It's a past experience, which means that it's just information, it's just memory, it's just a concept or a belief, something you've taken on from somewhere else. So in a true initial awakening, it's where we have glimpsed the truth non-conceptually, directly. It is like a great epiphany, a realization. And for many beings, what happens is they have this initial awakening, and then the forces of the mind, the unconscious forces, the compulsive forces of the mind, seem to take you over again. And you fall back into this state of unconsciousness, back into these patterns in which it can feel like you're kind of like a puppet on a string. It feels like you're just subject to all of this mental conditioned activity. And when you've had that initial awakening, it can be very frustrating when that happens, because you've now tasted the contrast between the two. You've seen what it is, you've felt what it is directly, to be awake, to be conscious. And you've also experienced now what it's like to fall back into the unconscious patterns of the mind. And so it is not really until we have this initial awakening that the path, the unfoldment, really begins. This is not the end of the path. It's only the beginning. Even the Buddha himself said that there are only two mistakes to make on the path. One is not starting, and the other is not finishing. So in this initial awakening, it's like it's an in-between stage. Some moments you're conscious, some moments you're unconscious. It feels like you're kind of in and out. And actually, in this in and out phase of this initial awakening, the suffering, the unhappiness that you experience can be more intense. At least when you were unconscious and you had not had initial awakening, you didn't really know the difference in the contrast. Unhappiness was seen as just a normal part of life, to the point where most beings are just kind of numb to it. They've kind of resided to just being unhappy sometimes, happy other times, and cycling between the two. But in this initial awakening, you've had a taste of lasting happiness. Something that is permanent, something that is unchanging, beyond the mind, beyond the body, out of time, into the timeless. And so now, tasting that, what is common to happen is then there is a desire that forms, strong desire, even a longing, to want to be one with that always. To want to always be in this eternal happiness, in your true nature, in full consciousness, timelessness. Because it is recognized that that really is freedom. And so this is really when the path truly begins. We can call it a path, or we can call it the pathless path. Really, it is just an analogy. Call it what you want, but from this initial awakening, there is a strong energy to move towards that. And so this is what these open self-realization meetings are for, is to really get clear on that. To get clear on your initial awakening. The path, the prerequisites of that. And to have this desire, this longing to want to go all the way to complete that. Because as many of you are probably aware, your initial awakening and what you realized can deepen. You realize more. You have more epiphanies. What you realized maybe a year ago, what you realize now, could be vastly different, more deep, more expansive. So when we think we've realized it, it just goes on deepening. But there is a way to come to the end of the path where we have seen and cleared up all of those misconceptions that we have been conditioned with by our society, in which then it leaves us with total crystal clarity, total confidence in who and what we really are. To be without any doubt. In the initial awakening, those beings find that they still have lots of doubts. I invite you to see if this is the case for you. Do you still have lots of doubts? Do you find that you have moments of unhappiness, of anxiety, depression, fear? There's nothing wrong with these. These are not a reflection on who you are. They are simply a result of wrong ideas. They are simply the result of an unliberated mind. When the mind is not liberated, we believe all kinds of things that are false. And so we live in a delusion where we are operating, seeing illusions. You might have seen some of this street art where they can kind of draw on the floor these big holes. It looks like you got to jump over it. And they can seem so convincing, so real. from a certain distance. But of course, as you get closer to it and you inspect it more closely, you soon come to realize that it's an optical illusion. And this is the nature of an illusion. An illusion is something that appears to be a certain way when it is not really that way. It's not really true. One of the biggest illusions is the illusion that all we are is simply a body and a mind, a separate body and mind. And so this is what we must investigate and explore, so that we are clear that we are not that. And as we become more clear on this and more confident in this, as we go into that completeness of awakening, instead of there being some kind of distinction where things are pushed away, like I am not the body, I am not the mind, so I push the body and mind away, it is not a pushing away of anything. The beauty of it is that it is an inclusion of everything. It's inclusive, not exclusive. It's integrative, not segregative. We don't segregate anything, we integrate. This is the true oneness, right? This is the true non-duality, not two. But this is something that cannot be told to you. We cannot just hear this and fully awaken to it. We have to see it. Nobody can show it us. We have to see it for ourselves. If somebody just tells us and we just accept that, then it is just a belief system. You see? So you and you alone must realize that truth. There can be guidance to show this, to point to this, to know how to ask the right questions, to dismantle the illusions that might be blocking that, so that it can be streamlined, fast-tracked to that point. One of the fast tracks is meditation. Meditation in its truest form. Because meditation in its truest form is not a mental exercise. You're likely aware of many meditations. There's so many out there. But most of these are not really meditation in its purest form. They are mental exercises. It's something you have to do. It's a kind of technique. But true meditation is not a technique. True meditation is to be with life. True meditation is something that's pointing towards life itself. So it reveals to us, so really we can say, can we get the message of meditation? What is it revealing to us? Because once we really get the message of meditation, then meditation is not something that we are doing to cultivate something. Meditation is a device to put life under a microscope. to show us something. What is it that meditation is showing us? One of the other fast tracks is the practice of self-inquiry, self-exploration. To really look at the nature of this body, how it functions. To look at the sensations, the feelings, the emotions, and to see them as they are, not to see them as the mind is projecting them to be. Have you noticed, for instance, that the feeling of fear or anxiety is not so different from the feeling of excitement? Anxiety and excitement, they feel the same, but the difference is the interpretation that we put on top of it. The labels, the ideas. If you're waiting to get on a big roller coaster ride, or you're doing some kind of extreme sport, you might not know what you're feeling. There's like, am I feeling excitement or am I feeling fear and anxiety? And really they are the same feeling, just with a different story attached to it. So in self-exploration of the body, we can really start to see the true nature of our feelings, of our emotions. To be really clear about that. And this helps not to become a slave to our feelings and emotions. To not get overwhelmed by them. The same is true for the mind. In self-exploration, we can really start to look at the true nature of the mind. The average person has, I am told, 30 to 60,000 thoughts every day. And 95% plus of these are negative and repetitive mental stories. And so from the moment that a being wakes up in the morning, they've got this mental story playing with all these thoughts. And for most beings, they've not really looked at the mind. In fact, many beings, they do everything that they can to not look at the mind. This is why many people keep themselves so busy, not to look at the mind. They don't want to sit with it. They don't want to sit with the mind because it's disturbing to see. It's disturbing to see just how turbulent, agitated, busy, fearful, restless it is. But there is a big problem with not looking at it, and that is that if we don't look at it, it gets suppressed and it cannot be liberated. If we don't look at it, then we're not shining the light of consciousness on it, and so it just becomes more unconscious. And even though it is kind of in the background, it is still greatly affecting the way that a person feels, their actions, their decisions, their perception. So in self-exploration of the mind, we're bringing all of that to light. We're looking at that so that we can begin to question these stories, to see if they're true or not. Because we're only holding them because we think they're true on some level. It's a certain belief that we have about ourselves, about the world, about certain situations. So we start to look at that. We shine light on it, and this allows us to be able to release these thought patterns, to question them, to release them, to find freedom, to not suffer them. And then the deepest part of self-exploration is to look at what we are beyond the body and mind. Who is it that is at the very source of your experience? Who are you really? Can you be aware of that one? Can you be aware of that unchanging nature? So the practice of meditation, instant meditation, self-exploration, these two are really the fast track towards self-realization, towards freedom. These were what I found for myself that I gravitated towards and was extremely useful because it really cuts to the heart. Because with these two devices, you are really getting to the core of all the issues. Really seeing life as it is. And as it's been said before, when we see the truth, it is the truth that sets us free. The answer is not outside, the answer is within. The only way out is within. But our society has taught us that the way out is to do things in the world, to become somebody, to accumulate something, to get something more. We've been taught that there is this kind of pie, and we've all got to fight for this slice of the pie. And really it is an illusion, because when you speak to people that have come towards the end of their life, many of them are in a kind of state of confusion. They all of a sudden realize that everything that they were pursuing and chasing, more money, everything in a perceived future, their retirement, the next pleasure, the next action to try and secure themselves, they realize at the end of their life that really it was all an illusion, because it was all taken away anyway. Everything that they were attaching to, everything they were clinging to and striving for was all taken away anyway. And yet so much effort was exerted in doing that every single day. Whereas if we take that same energy and we turn it towards that which is unchanging, that which is lasting, then we will find something that can never be taken away. And so really this is what society has done to everybody, as it has convinced us from a young age to try to become something more and achieve something more. I remember myself when I was at school, a young boy, and I was asked these two key questions. The question was, what do you want to do when you grow up? And what do you want to be when you grow up? And they seem maybe like just harmless questions. But as a child, that was not even in the mind. As a child, I was just enjoying being, just enjoying this moment, playing. And then as soon as I entertained those two thoughts, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? Which are thoughts of a perceived future, which is really illusory, imaginary. Then it began to disturb me. It began to disturb me from what was here, what was already there. And as that strengthened, because society was encouraging that more, and your friends are encouraging that, and your family's encouraging that, it's all about the future. It's about what you've achieved in the so-called past and where you're going in the so-called future. As that begins to solidify, before you know it, you have lost the beauty and the wonder, the innocence, the playfulness of what is already here, of who you already are. And then we are always overlooking it, you see. This is the programming, this is the conditioning. The society really is creating worker bees, good consumers. Because as I often joke, a Buddha, a Krishna, a Christ is not very good for the economy. They don't generate much money because they're so content. So they're not consuming all of the time. They're not trying to get somewhere in which they have to consume a lot to try to get to that point. So it is certainly in the societies and the corporations' interest, maybe, to have these ideas, this conditioning, but it is not in our best interest if we wish to be truly peaceful, free, happy. This conditioning just creates the stress and the restlessness and the dissatisfaction that is experienced. So really, for the spiritual path, there are two main prerequisites. The first is to have that desire, that longing, because that is the fuel, that is the energy. For some people, maybe they say, I don't desire that. I don't desire freedom. I don't desire happiness. My life is pleasant. So why would I desire that? And that's okay. That just means that that being is not ready for awakening. Because it doesn't have to be for everybody. Even though it is everybody's true nature, what is awakened to, life will allow you to play out your illusion if you want to play out that illusion. That is absolutely fine. Like we said earlier, suffering is necessary until it is no longer necessary. To play in the illusion of things is necessary until it is no longer necessary. Until something jolts us and says, this is an illusion, this is causing us suffering, in which then that creates within us the longing to want to be free. So this is something that we have to look at closely. We have to really say, what is it that I want? What is it that I really want? Do you want to be a millionaire? Do you want to be liked by everybody? Do you want to be successful in a certain career? Do you want a family? Do you want to live in a certain location? These are all fine. But for awakening, the desire for awakening must be top of the list. The desire to be free, to find true happiness, must be top of the list. Otherwise, there is just lots of distractions. Your energy is going over here, then it's going over here, then it's going over there. And this is what I have often seen. I must have been fortunate enough to work with now thousands of people over the last 15 years or so. And many of them have really gone deep into their awakening. Some have completed their awakening. But there are also many that get distracted from that. You find that, for instance, they maybe had a relationship breakdown, which was a catalyst for them to have this awakening, to question and to look at things again freshly, and to kind of have this moment of, who am I? And then they go into that, but then you see them sometime later and they've gone back into another relationship and they're just repeating the same pattern because they've become distracted. So this is why it is important that we continue to ask, what is it that we really want more than anything? And to make a decision on that, to be legitimately on the path. So I invite you to ask that question: are you legitimately on the path? Have you made that decision? Are you resolute that the direction I'm moving in is to be more and more of my true self? Which means to be free from unhappiness, to be free from suffering, to be more and more conscious. If a being has decided that, then it means that they are consciously, legitimately on the path. They have made it known within themselves that this is the direction they are moving. This is important, very important. I know for myself, there was just a strong longing for nothing but that. Everything else just seemed completely secondary. Because for myself, I saw that this was the most important thing. That the foundation of life, of truth, of who we are, can only be the most important thing. Because everything else comes after that. Everything else changes, comes and goes, does not last. But only the truth of what we are does last. So it was very clear that this is what I wish to live from as. The second prerequisite, beyond having this strong desire, this longing, being clear on what we want, is to then be available to it. Are we available? Are we open to it? Receptive? Because it is not about control. Sometimes what happens is that the tendency of the mind is to control things, is to do things. So it starts to perceive itself as somebody that is doing the spiritual path, somebody that is doing meditation. And so it gets turned into a form of doing something, gets turned into a task, into a lot of effort. And really life is not asking this from us, because the more effort that we make, the further away that we get from it. You know, you might have heard of the Zen story of the disciple who went to the master and said, "How do I become enlightened?" And so the master said, "Meditate." And the disciple said, "How long should I meditate for?" And the master said, 10 years. And the disciple said, "Well, if I meditate more often, more frequently, then how long will it be then?" And the master said, "Well, in that case, it will take 20 years. In other words, the more that we try, the more effort, the further away we are getting from it, you see. So it's not something that is a struggle. It is simply doing the right things in the right way, asking the right questions, exploring in the right way. And so this is my invitation. This is my invitation to everybody in Open Self-Realization Satsang, is to be clear on this. And I'm open to answer any questions on this. And even just these meetings, by connecting to that which is underneath the words, in between the words, is also an invitation to be available to that, to be available to the grace of life. To have desire, but then to be available. To have intensity of longing, of desire, and then at the same time to be available. This is the sweet spot that really opens us to see clearly who we are, to see what reality is. So I invite, maybe we can hand it over for any questions that anybody would like to maybe ask. Anything that anybody would like to clarify or share. I'll hand that over to Mike.
Roland.
Yes, good evening, Christopher.
Hello.
Hello, yes, thank you. Yeah, it's very clear for me what you're saying. I see the depth in the teachings you bring to us. Yeah, I have busy on my path for awakening for a few years, and I know that the mind is the big obstacle in the way. So when I'm meditating on some situations in my life, I see the problem. I see what I must do, but there is something I don't can turn the switch on. So I know I must turn inside. For an example, yeah, there's a woman in my life, and I met her. We have a very deep connection. It's beautiful. She sits in a situation that she must finish the old relation, to sell the house, and so she asks time. And I know because I have seen in a journey, in a ceremony journey, I have seen her higher self connecting with me, and she give me the answer. And she has also seen me in her ceremonial, the same way, and that was magical. So I know, yeah, that's if it must be, it must be. But I can get, and I know that I must go within and leave it lost, But there is something that it keeps me in my head, and I want, yeah, I want to go loss of that. Not disconnection, but so that's very hard. That's one hard thing for me. And yeah.
Yes. So do you have a particular question on that?
Yeah. Normally, yeah, I can easy get loose of many things in life, but the love of a woman is, yeah, it's difficult for me.
The love of women is, so the attraction and the relationship and these things you're finding are a problem, an issue?
Yes, because my whole life I was willing in a relationship. I wanted to be, and yeah, it's. I have only one relationship, but it was a nice one. So yeah, when it comes around woman and she gives me the affection and the love,
Yes.
then I go too far, dive deep in it, and I know I don't must do it, but that's one thing in my.
So the question that anybody could ask in this situation is, and I think you've kind of touched on it anyway, but what is it that we believe that we're getting from a relationship? What is it that we think that that's really giving us?
Yeah.
You see? And once we can see what that is, then we can see whether it has the capacity to truly fulfill us or not. Will we ever be truly fulfilled by being reliant upon a relationship giving us something? What would you say to that?
No, because it's temporary.
Yes.
And moments.
Yes. So why is it, why do you think that there is this thought keeps coming up that you feel compelled to keep wanting a relationship?
Yeah, it's because I love to live with this woman. She has, yeah, we have a beautiful connection, and I love to live with another person in life, to build, yeah, a life together. I want to share my love, and.
But what will that give you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's my ego who wants that.
Oftentimes what happens is that you see that reaction that you had then when I asked that question, which went a little bit deeper, there was a kind of reaction, right? This is because many times we have these ideas about what we want, but we've not really looked deeper to see why it is that we want what we want. What do we really think that it's actually going to give us truly? And so our societies have taught us that these are the things that we should be chasing to be fulfilled. We should want the big bank account. We should want the nice house. We should want the family, the relationship. travel. Again, nothing wrong with these in and of themselves. They're all beautiful experiences of life, but they become a problem for us. They become a source of suffering for us when we think that we need them to be happy. And this is coming because we believe that happiness is based on circumstance. And so this is why we go chasing pleasure, pleasurable, pleasant circumstances. And we maybe think that if we just get enough of that, then one day when we have that nice relationship and that nice amount of money and that nice house, then we'll be fulfilled. But really what happens is that most beings throughout their whole life, and even when they get what they want, they still feel like something's missing. Most beings live in this state where they feel like something's constantly missing in their life. And so then they go for the next thing and the next thing. And this is how most beings live their whole life, right? They live their whole life pursuing the next thing. And it's always in the future, in the perceived future. And then even when they get it, maybe for a while they feel quite satisfied, but then it slowly wears off, right? And then they feel dissatisfied. And then they feel restless again and agitated again. And so then they go for the next thing. And it's like it's a trap. It's like a dog trying to chase its tail. It can never quite get it. Right? It's that carrot on a stick. And you just can't, have you noticed that? You just can't seem to quite get it. It's always just out of reach. This fulfillment, this happiness is always just out of reach. But yet there's a belief that says, no, what about tomorrow? What about next week? What about next year? And so there's this kind of belief that has like a faith that one day we will eventually find this completeness that we're after. There's a searching of happiness, a searching of also who we think we are, or what we would like to become. It's like we think in the future we're going to discover ourselves. We're going to really find out who we are and find that fulfillment. And so because of that belief, we never really look at what's actually already here. And we don't then see and feel the true source of lasting fulfillment, of lasting pleasure, true pleasure, that is already here. And we can't feel it because we have that belief that's making us not feel it. So this is why we have to then question that belief. We have to look at the validity of it and see if it's true or not. On some level, I would suggest if it keeps arising, it's because there's still a belief there that it is true. There's still this belief that when I do get the relationship, it will become the source of my pleasure, of my happiness. And I will then eventually be fulfilled. Does this make sense?
Yeah, because I speak with her about the things I do in life, ceremonial, shamanistic drums, also my spiritual awakening for many years. I've read many books. I talked with Ray about that, special books for me, and so I dive deep in the awakening process spiritually, and I speak with her about that, and she also want to do that, and because her relationship before she was blocked on that road, and now she feels with me, she feels okay, now we can lift each other up to go to the higher vibrations. So but we have our own space and we are together in the weekends, so we can lift it up. So it feels for her and for me, it feels well, it feels like true, because then we can, yeah. So like I say, we can lift each other up. But what I'm thinking also is that no, I must do it on my own. It's my process. It's my road, of my journey.
This does not mean, by the way, I'm not saying, please don't misinterpret anybody, that I'm saying that we have to renounce, push away these things. That's not what I'm saying here. A relationship could still be happening. It's just that it's just that we're not under the illusion that that relationship is the source of our true fulfillment. So somebody could still be having a relationship and enjoying that relationship, enjoying each other, which is a beautiful thing. But if each person in the relationship believes that the other is the source of their happiness, it will ultimately not work out. Or if it continues, there will be a jockeying for control.
Yeah.
Because if I think that someone else is the source of my happiness, then what's going to happen is you're going to start to control that other person, even if it's only subtly. Because you're trying to manage what you think is the source of your fulfillment. You think that you're extracting something from them that's giving you something. Okay. So then we can't really love then. We can't truly love another person because we're trying to get something from them. And maybe they're trying to get something from us. It becomes more like a business deal where we're extracting something from each other. And this is what most relationships have become.
Yeah.
You know, even marriage, right? Marriage is a contract. There is a deeper essence to marriage, but certainly marriage that we have experienced in the Western or the more modern world and many relationships today, it's a sense of what can I get from the other person? What is this other person giving me? Whereas when we recognize the source of all fulfillment within us, it's not what we can get, it's what can we share, what can we give, you see?
Yeah.
And then the relationship is a beautiful relationship. It's a really awakened relationship then.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the point with what I was speaking to her. That's the relationship I want to be in with her, with the woman. So in your own, and yeah, what you say, give each other. Yeah, but that's exactly what I want to be in a relationship, and I feel I don't know for sure, but yeah, the feeling was very deep, so
yes,
that we can achieve that point in a relationship. But now it is some space time, and yeah, and that space time is it's a little bit difficult. But yeah.
If there is no need for the relationship, then you can truly enjoy the relationship. But if you find that you need it, then I would suggest to question that and to find out what is the belief that makes me think that I need another individual.
Yeah.
You see, because that will then become a source of suffering for yourself and maybe for the other as well. You see. So this is a way of looking deeper. Does this answer the question?
Yes, very
brilliant. Thank you, Roland. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Suhair.
Hi.
Hello.
I have a question. I'm in the process of a dark night of the soul, so a lot of things is coming up, and I really have trouble of connecting with my higher self, or just connecting in general with like my true self. And I really feel like I am still stuck in the mind, still believing the mind, identifying with the mind and emotions. And I really want to like truly awaken, and I really want to like stop suffering and find the happiness within, but I just don't know how I don't feel like the good emotions like I did before, but I don't think it was like the true happiness, it was more the ego happiness. So how can I like connect more with my true self and
Mhm.
find my path where I have to go? Because I feel like I'm living like a path I'm not true. It's not true. Everything feels like a lie to me, and I'm just lost.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. Well, the first step is what you've already taken, which is that you have self-awareness of that. Many beings, they are living in a state of unconsciousness where they don't recognize this.
Mhm.
So they don't see that there is another way to be. They think this is just how it is. I just have to try to do the best that I can in the mind and manage my life situation to try and feel good more than feeling not good based on my situation. And this is because their mind is entangled with the circumstances. So 1 minute they feel good when things are going well. When things are not going well, then they don't feel good. So they become like a puppet on a string, up and down, up and down.
Mhm.
And so what we have to realize is what is there within us that is this unchanging, this nature that is not tied or dependent upon any circumstance to be as it is, to be truly happy. We got to realize this. And we realize it by inquiring, by looking. You see, this is really what the longer retreats and the private meetings are about, because these are, you see, nobody can tell us what it is. It has to be shown. We have to see it within our own authority of looking. This is why, you know, a being could read a book, you can watch a video, you can listen, and you can listen. But if we don't see it for ourselves, it doesn't hit home. There's not a shift there. You see, it just becomes words, just concepts that we take on. So we have to say, what is the action? What is really the action? What is the action of looking at seeing what I really am in this moment? You see, we've got to be able to look at that clearly, because the mind is it's got all kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
And we got to clear those ideas up. And lots of ideas as well, not just about society, but ideas about our true nature, ideas about spirituality or the spiritual path. And whatever we think that it is not what we think it is. The moment that we think we have it, or we think we know what it is, you can be sure that it's not that. You see?
All right.
So my invitation is always to go into this deeper investigation, is to really look at that more closely, and to have a thorough amount of time to really go into that. Because it's not just about seeing what we are, it's also about seeing what we're not. We have to come to irrefutable clarity. You know, the word clarity, I think of ghee like butter that you can use. It's clarified butter. This means that it's been separated from something. So in the same way, we first have to clarify what we are. We have to separate. We have to see clearly, I am not this and I am not that. This is what I am. And once we've clarified that, naturally what will happen is there'll be other ideas that come up, other belief systems that come up, which are opposed to that, which counter that. Like, for instance, the belief that I am separate, the belief that I am lacking the belief that I am a controller or a doer of life. You see? These beliefs must be cleared up. And once they're cleared up, this is how we can then begin to live as that, always in each moment, to be what they call being established in that truth. See? So this investigation is not something I go into in these open meetings, because it requires a much deeper investigation for that.
Yeah.
To really be immersed into that. And this is what, when we do the longer retreats, we really go thoroughly, step by step through that. So that by the end of the retreat, a being has full, irrefutable clarity on who and what they are, and they've seen it within their own authority of looking. They've had a glimpse of that, you see. So this is something that I don't really go into too much in the open self-realization satsang. All I would say is that if you really feel ready for that, which it sounds like you are, then this is what I would recommend.
All right. Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments or? It's always available for us in each moment right now. Always available. But we have to know how to look at it. Because what the mind is doing, the mind has been conditioned to always intellectualize everything. Right? It's always intellectualizing. Because this is what it's been trained to do. It's been trained to take on information. And to try to understand things based on the mind. What I came to realize is that all I can truly understand is that I don't understand anything at all. Because who is it that understands or tries to understand? It is the mind. So when we have this direct knowing, it's not an understanding. Direct experience, to see the truth, is not an understanding. It's not a mental understanding that we come to. And it's certainly not a belief system. It's immediate, it's direct, it's an intuitive knowing through looking at what is actually here right now, looking from what is here right now. The very source of our immediate experience. This is what, to the mind, makes it frustrating, because the mind is so used to intellectually trying to understand something. It wants a framework. And it's very unsettling for the mind, because the mind survives on having a framework. It gives it a sense of, as if it knows what everything is, it gives it a sense of direction or orientation. And so really what is happening in awakening is we're moving to a new orientation. We're moving out of the orientation of the mind to an intuitive, direct orientation. A much deeper intelligence. This is what many of the philosophers have said, whether it's Socrates, all that I know is that I know nothing. Yes, do we have another question?
Yes, Roland.
Yeah, I want to share some experience of me, if that's okay.
Please
Because
do.
last week, the Sunday, Mike and Ray had a podcast on the teachings of the knowledge of Ray, of the heart. And when I listened to that podcast, I experienced a moment. It was a glimpse, a moment, and I saw my full potential. I feel it. I felt it. I saw my powers, my without the conditioning, but it was a glimpse. But
I think we've lost Roland for a minute.
and it
Oh,
was
Roland,
tijdens the podcast.
we've lost you for like 10 seconds. So if you can rewind.
Where was I? I experienced for a moment. It was a glimpse, a moment. My full potential, because last weekend, we had a nice weekend together with gatherings, and we share some things about each other, ourselves. And after that weekend, the Sunday evening, I watched the podcast from Mike and Ray. I have felt and saw a glimpse of myself, my full potential, my full powers. It was so pure, so clear. But when I go with to enjoy of that moment, boom, it was away. So it was magical. I saw it, and I felt it, and it was beautiful. So I see myself where my path is going to.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes, these are some of the realizations that we can have. And you start to see more clearly, like you say, what is possible.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is the opposite of what the mind, the conditioned mind, often believes, which is many limitations, has many limitations. Yes.
Many doors going open. I saw the doors going open.
Yes.
It was magical. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
This is really true, because at the very source of what we are, really, we can say it is infinite potential there. There are unlimited possibilities there. What keeps a being stuck in certain limitations is really only their mind. It's their mind, it's their belief system, it's their karma. And the karma really is the patterns of the mind, often deeply rooted, deeply embedded patterns. And so this creates the sense of limitation, and almost a sense of Groundhog Day, where people feel like they're living the same life over and over and over again. And that's what can be very frustrating, is it feels like they're repeating the same patterns. And you see this, you see it in your own life. Everybody has had this to some degree. You might see that somebody keeps finding themselves in the same kind of relationship over and over again. You might find that somebody has a certain pattern with certain family members or friends, or when it comes to money, or a pattern of self-sabotage, or guilt or shame, whatever it may be. So every being has got this to some level, and these are what can begin to be cleared up as a being awakens to who they really are. And then when these patterns have subsided, what they call in the Eastern tradition as the vasanas, the deep tendencies, these karmic tendencies, when the momentum of that stops, then what is left is infinite possibilities in this moment. the ability for something new to happen, a new response, not a repetitive pattern. So yes, this is beautiful. Very happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, sharings? No questions. No questions. Oh, here we go.
Yes, Sander.
Mhm.
Amen. Your microphone's turned off. You can turn it on. There's a microphone. Yeah.
I have one question. Hello, Mike. Hello, Ray. All the others. Nice to see you again. My question was two things. How do you know you're meditating the right way? How can you know that you're doing it the right way?
Mm. Because it will not feel like a doing. It will not feel like there is somebody there that is doing something as a practice. There will be an effortlessness to it. You see, really, there are three main approaches, what I share when it comes to what I would call instant meditation, which is really true meditation, the foundation of all meditation practices. And the first approach is to not do anything, to not do a particular technique. So we enter without a technique, because if we enter with a technique, what this means is that it's our mind that's trying to employ that technique. So we're already giving the mind something to do. So it becomes a doing, you see. So we're giving the mind something to do, like a mantra, watching the breath, counting the breath, visualizing something, focusing on something. These are all good practices in their own right, and they all have a place. But when it comes to true instant meditation, it is not a practice, it is not a strategy. So the very first approach is to not give the mind something to do. This is the first thing. So we enter without a technique, without something to do. The second thing is to not expect anything. Many times when people meditate, they're going in with an expectation. So they have the expectation that maybe they're trying to fix something. They're trying to achieve a certain state. They're trying to repeat a certain state that they've already experienced before. All of these expectations means that we're in the mind, because expectation is of the mind. And if we're in the mind, then we're not in our true self, and therefore we're not in instant meditation. So the first thing is, if we're doing something, we're giving the mind something to do, which means we're activating the mind, we're in the mind, and we're not in our true nature. The second is, if we're expecting something, we're also in the mind, in a state of the future as well, a sense of the future. And then we're also not in our true nature. And then the third is to approach this instant meditation without thinking that we are someone that is meditating. Without having the idea that I am a meditator that's meditating. Without having the idea that I'm a spiritual person that's meditating. You see? Because this is also a mind as well. If I sit and I think I am meditating, that is a mental idea that I've got. So really, these are the three non-doings, if you will. is to not have a technique or strategy, to not do anything. The second is to not expect anything, so not trying to get to a certain result. And the third is to not be somebody that is meditating. If these three are not there, then you're in instant meditation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Sander, was there a second question?
Yeah, was maybe a little bit in relationship to the other one. How to be in this moment?
That's a good one. How to be in this moment. Are you not in this moment right now?
I am right now because I'm focusing on you, but in normal life there are a lot of distractions, you know, things what you're thinking about, the future, past, all those kind of things. So maybe the answer lies in the previous question. It's almost like meditating, I think, then be in the moment or not.
Certainly, if you can enter into meditation, instant meditation, then you are in the moment. You are in this moment right now, and you are here beyond even the concept of moment, beyond the concept of here or now. Certainly. But a good, thing for us to ask is it really possible to be anywhere other than here and now? And it may seem like it, but what I would ask is the body not always here and now?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. So if the body is always here and now, then it must mean that trying to be here and now would only be to overlook the reality that everything can only be here right now. You see?
Yeah.
In this way, then you're not trying to be here and now, it is a recognition. Okay? Very good. Good question.
Thank you.
Gert-Jan.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Christopher. I have a question with regard to Sander's first question, with regard to the instant meditation. I get your 3 points. I think those are 3 valid points. I have a question about strategy, and it's about breath work. Do you think that breath work before meditation is going to make it easier for you to get in the meditative state? Because I get the not doing, I get the being here and now and don't having a strategy. But are there certain kinds of things that you can do before meditation to get easier in the meditative state, like breath work?
I see. Yeah. I think breath work is beautiful, beautiful practice. There are many things that we can do for the nervous system, to settle down the nervous system, whether it be physical yoga asanas, postures, certain exercises, breath work. These are all things that can certainly help to calm down the nervous system, in which then it may feel easier to enter into meditation. But really what's being spoken about here is the direct way, because if we think we have to rely on a practice like breath work, for instance, to be who we are, then it means that somehow we are then going to be dependent upon that practice. It means that we have to use that practice to be what we are, which is an illusion, which is not true. Because if we have to rely on anything that can change to be who we are, then it means that what we are must also be something that is changeable. It must mean that it's something that's not already here. It must mean that it's something that's not already the case. So really the full depth of self-realization is to go even beyond these kind of practices, although these practices can be useful at some time or another. But it's to see even more directly what is immediately always already here. Because these are sometimes the games that the mind is playing. The mind will play the game that I have to do my yoga, my breath work before I can be myself, right? So it's a delaying again. It's delaying it to a future moment. It's saying I've got to create a certain state before I can be what I really am. So this is kind of more like what you might call the progressive path, where we're cultivating the nervous system to kind of accommodate our true nature, in which it seems like it makes it easier. And while that might help for a while, as we go into the deeper, more subtle levels of self-realization, we will start to find that these things become a hindrance. Because making that decision that I have to do something to be a certain way is a way of putting off. It's a way of delaying, postponing who and what we really are. And so in this deepest exploration, we are not postponing anything. We are saying, can we come to see what is always immediately already here and now? And can we begin to live as that always, to be in conscious recognition of that always, you see? So I don't know if this answers the question or not.
Yes, it answers the question. Thank you. So what you're saying is that it has its uses at start, but don't rely on them, because instant meditation, it means that you can be who you are at any moment. A second question to that, in times that your mind is busy and you don't do a practice like that beforehand, and then your mind is busy during the meditation, that's okay. Just notice it, accept that the mind is busy, and progress.
Yes, this is something that can get picked up, is this idea that we've got to have a silent mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've got to quiet the mind. We've got to destroy the mind. Really, it is to see what is always already there underneath the mind. When we see what is there underneath the mind already, then we don't have to do anything with the mind. We don't have to control the mind, right? It's like the sun in the sky, right? The sun's always shining in the sky. Let's say it's always shining in the sky. But the clouds, whether it's a cloudy day or whether it's a clear day, it really makes no difference to the sun itself. The sun shines regardless whether it is clear or cloudy. Because when you're coming from the position of the sun itself, then it's always shining. But if we think that we are on the other side of the clouds, on the ground, then it's going to seem like the sun can only shine upon us when the clouds are not there. So then we think that we have to be reliant upon the clouds, right? So we think only when it is a clear day can I feel the sun. When it is a cloudy day, I cannot feel the sun. This is to overlook the fact that we are not on the ground, but we are the sun itself. When we realize that we are the sun itself, then it actually doesn't matter whether it is a cloudy day or whether it is a clear day. In the very same way, it doesn't matter whether the mind is busy or whether it is quiet. Because if we recognize that what we are is underneath the mind and we are looking from that place, then the mind could be busy or the mind could be quiet, and it won't make a difference to who we really are. Does this answer the question?
Yes, it answers the question. Thank you. It makes it a lot more clear. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Any more questions? We have, I think, 10 minutes left or so. There are always these opportunities to connect to what we are. It is always here, but the question is, do we really notice it? Or are we somewhere else? Or think that we are somewhere else? Or think that we are something else? This is really what we must become clear on. No questions? No questions?
Anjali.
I wanted only to say, I was thinking about what you said about that busy mind. But for me, it feels a lot comfortable when my mind is quiet, and then I can hear my inner voice. But if my mind is so busy, then well, I cannot hear it. I feel disconnected.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So for me, it works very well to do some relaxing exercises or something like that, and to focus on something else, and to bring that mind first to rest.
Mm. But what is it that is aware of this? What is aware of this thought that says that I must have a quiet mind or I must do something?
Yeah, I know that is a belief of the mind. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is, of course, more mind.
I'm sorry.
Which is, of course, just more mind, right? So the mind that is, let's say, busy, and the one that thinks it has to have a quiet mind is really the same mind.
Yeah, yeah.
You see that? And so who is it that is aware of those two thoughts?
Yeah.
This really points deeper to what is underneath, what is before that.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who watches the relaxed state and who watches the busy state?
Yeah, that's my true self.
Yes.
Yeah.
And does this one that watches the busy state and the relaxed state, is it dependent upon the relaxed state or the busy state?
No, no, not at all. No, not at all. No, no. Yeah, that's a trap, huh? It's a trap. Yeah.
You see that? It's very subtle trap. Yes, very
Yeah.
subtle trap.
Yeah.
This trap can go on for quite a while because the more relaxed we are, we get relaxed, we feel very good with it. And so we are almost training ourselves to have to do certain things before we feel a certain way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we end up giving permission to something. We end up becoming dependent upon something for that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fine for a while. It will take us so far with that. But then we will find that it has its own limitation to it. We hit a wall with it, you see.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
See that?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, the same.
Mireida.
Yes, thank you for your teachings, Chris. I have a question. What I see around me, what I see in general is that most people that have that are self-realized are people who didn't have the distraction of work of partner, of house or children, and all those things. And my question is it possible if you have your job and you have your husband and your wife or whatever, is it and you devote yourself to this work, is it even possible to self-realize? Sometimes I think you have to become like a monk to be able to focus completely. And then I ask myself, even then, is it then possible? Because it is hard. Those three things of instant meditation, no technique, no expectation, and not the idea that you are the doer. That's not something for me. It's not something easy. It is bloody hard. So is it possible to realize this, having your job, your husband, wife, your house? Is that even possible?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you for your question. Well, there have been many beings, throughout the ages that have had a family life and that have awoken within family life, within working life. Many of the saints and the mystics, not all of them were monks, not all of them retreated into the Himalayas or the woods. Many of them did work. I can think of quite a few that used to work and run businesses or had families. Again, these are circumstances. This is part of the circumstantial world. And what we are is beyond circumstances, because the circumstances change. Our circumstances are a reflection of our karma, of our memory, what we have been putting energy towards. And so, of course, everybody has different circumstances, different karma, different memory. But what we share is this unchanging nature. And so it is possible for every being to realize that, because this is ultimately what we are. This is who we really are. We just need to see it clearly. And so we can actually use whatever circumstance we have as a way to explore that, to deepen in that. If we believe that it's a burden, then it's going to feel like a burden. But if we can approach our life circumstance in a certain way, in the right way, we can turn it into an actual catalyst for our self-realization. In the ancient yogic systems in India, they prescribed 4 main paths for different personality types. And one of those was the path of what's called karma yoga. And karma in Sanskrit means action. So it is the path of action. I refer to this as the path of free action. How can we be free in the midst of action? Which means, can we be engaged in our actions without being attached to the result of our actions? Without being identified with our actions? This is coming back to this non-doership. So if we can create that approach with the things that we are doing in our life, or the actions that are being taken in our life, we can use those things as a way to begin to focus on the action itself without focusing on getting something from the action, a result, and without being identified with the action, thinking I am the doer, right? So in other words, if we are a mother, then if we have a strong identity of being a mother, then this is an illusion from what we really are. We're playing the role of mother. This is a role that we are playing, but it's to recognize that we're not really the mother. We're not really a mother. We're only playing the role of mother. This is to see, of course, more deeply what we are. So can we show up in that role as a mother, for instance, without having a strong identity that I am a mother? If we can show up in that role without that strong identity, then that role becomes a tool for us to actually become more and more free. It serves us then to become more and more free. It becomes almost like a subtle practice where we show up and we play the role of mother, but we play it in a non-identified way, a detached way. We still honor the role. We still play it to the best of our ability, but we're just not under the illusion that we are this limited role called mother, called father, called son, called daughter. And of course, this extends to many things. This could be our job. We're playing the role of a banker, right? But we realize we're not a banker. We're just playing that role, you see? So we can use all of these things. But if we have the belief that we can't, then that belief itself will become the limitation. Because then we're going to say, well, I can only do this self-realization thing when I'm not in the middle of these circumstances. I'm going to have to renounce everything and go and be a monk, you see. And some people do that, of course. And some people have the life circumstance where maybe it's easier to do that. Although Buddha himself, right? The Buddha, he had a whole kingdom. He was going to be left his father's kingdom. He had a wife. He had a newborn baby. But he had a strong calling for truth, to find the answer to end all suffering. And so for him, what was the right thing to do was to walk away from that situation. But for another being, what will feel right is to be in the middle of that situation, to honor those roles, to honor their karma, you see. So what I want to say is that it's absolutely possible to self-realize if your circumstances can be approached in the right way. There's always time to find for meditation. Even if we think we haven't got much time, we can always make some time, even if it is only 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Of course, what we're pointing to here is even more immediate than that, because it's not even a sitting practice as such. It's to bring that quality of meditativeness to all aspects of our life. You see? So what I would say is that, yes, it is 100% possible. If that belief feels strong, then I would question that belief. Is it really true that I cannot self-realize based on my circumstances? If that is the case, then what to do? That would mean that you're trapped. But I don't feel that anybody is truly trapped. A being only traps themselves based on what they believe. If you believe you're trapped, then you will be trapped. If you believe that something is a limited circumstance, then you will be limited by it. But if you recognize that it can be used, and you come from that right approach and use it in that way, then it will serve you. Does this answer the question? Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, well, I think we are maybe coming to the end, unless anybody else has any questions or comments. If not, then I will pass it over to Mike. And it's a pleasure to be with everybody. I'm very, very happy to meet everybody, at least virtually. And yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher, Ray, everybody that's in here. Thanks for being here in this space together, and thank you for the wonderful questions. I hope you've gotten insight and realizations and longing to pursue this path, and overall just a good feeling about attending this meeting and what might come out of it, even though we shouldn't have expectations, but still, like, we're human beings. But I'll send out an email to everyone that signed up for this satsang, so also the people that couldn't make it can watch the recording. You find the live stream, so you can go over that again if you like. But also, I just want to invite you, if you feel called to go deeper into this investigation and to this realization, much deeper, to join the 5-day retreat on October 21st. You'll find more information about it in the email. And if you're watching this on the YouTube live stream, then there will be a link in the description. But that's it. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be here in your space. And I think it's amazing that we are able to do this work. I think to be in a point where the world is today, to be conscious and awake and know that this is important, and to know that this is possible for you to pursue this path, to me that is something to be very grateful of. So I hope to meet you one day at this place we call Oneness. Have a great evening, and then we'll see each other soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dankjewel, Mark. Goedenavond.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.